Hi, welcome. So, Howard, please introduce yourself a little bit. You're a one of the best salespeople I know out there. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Gene. Yes, thrilled to be on, thrilled to be with you. Thank you. Yes, I'm a fractional sales and business development professional. I've been doing so for, oh gosh, going on 16 years this spring. After a long stint in corporate America, I hung out my own shingle. And over the years, I've worked with anything from, ad tech startups to mentoring overseas startups to digital media companies, video technology companies, like I said, all under the guise of either direct sales or, as I define business development, helping out with third party partnerships. In each of these cases, I've been working, like I said, fractionally for my clients and always looking for the latest and greatest to help me do my job better.
Just out of curiosity, what made you change from like the corporate America setting to this new fractional role? We hear a lot about it now. Like, what was that thing that actually spurred that?
Sure. Gosh, I'm gonna the de facto answer, but it is the God's honest truth. Is I kind of fell into it. Uh, Came out of a 6-year run at IAC. Was acquired actually as part of a search engine called Ask Jeeves, which some people may remember. This preceded my delve into business development sales. Uh, my group was being disbanded. It was actually a pretty good time economically, but they had formed this centralized IAC mobile group, and essentially mobile was no longer going to be just a cute channel, but really core to each of our operating businesses. And to his credit, my manager at the time gave us about a 12-month heads up, saying that this centralized group was meant to be disbanded, and that each of these functions would take place at the operating business level. Having been almost 6 years at the combined entity, I just figured, like, look, let me go out and see what's next. 6 years in the Bay, or really in any tech role, seems like an eternity, and I was told as such in some interviews during that time. What are you doing there still? It got me thinking, like, okay, and I did. I had a handshake deal to start, join a startup in San Francisco at the time. Wound up giving my notice. That startup kind of never came to be. Matter of fact, here we are 15, almost 16 years later, still haven't heard from that founder after redlining his equity agreement. So I was just trying to kill some time until funding was raised, handshake committed to this opportunity. And as I was kind of waiting for funding, I picked up a couple of fractional roles. And, to this day, I still have dear friends who have no idea what I do, right? That they'll ask and say, what is it again? For whom? Why? Weren't you working with this company and no longer? So, as we'll get into probably a little deeper in the interview, not to write your questions for you, but opportunities come about usually organically through word of mouth, etc. I'm lucky that an old guy like myself is still thought of by some of my peers, former peers, and friends and whatnot. So, kind of like I said, kind of fell into it, gained some momentum, and I'll tell you, to this day, still a bit of a roller coaster, but I'm hanging on for the ride.
So what is it like? Why would somebody hire you? What are you pain point are you solving for? Or what are you helping them with that they, let's say, couldn't just hire directly into their teams or do? So what's your expertise and why somebody typically does that?
Yeah, I mean, I point to my experience first and foremost, and then to hopefully the personality that I bring. I'll admit to not being overly technical, but once I have product knowledge and some sense of, I'm putting my pitch together and addressing pain points, the fractional model really allows any company. I did mention I work with a lot of startups, a lot of flexibility, right? I mean, I'm not asking for, hey, I've got 25, 30 years of experience. I'm going to ask for, may not get it, but I'm not going to go and ask for $250,000 base salary or an OTE or 550, 5% stake in the company. I can be flexible, both with the amount of time and effort I put in, and then on their side to meet budgets. And typically, I'll be a shorter term commitment. So if things for any reason are not working out, or there's a pivot, or they ask me to take a pause, I'm a team of one. I can certainly do so, right? I can, if both parties agree to it, I offer a heck of a lot of flexibility. And like I said, I've been around the block a couple of times. So once I've got that product knowledge, really it's a matter of just kind of quote unquote unleashing me. And I've worked both independently and as part of a larger team. So I think a lot of what I bring to the table is, again, experience, know-how, energy, right? I want to succeed, and flexibility that the clients get and that I get. I treasure that on the regular. I love the fact that I get to work on a bunch of different things simultaneously if things are going
Right.
well for me.
So they can kind of flex up and flex down when they need to and bring on more sales.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
So with the world changing with AI right now, you have different tools and different things that you use to help you really become the best of the best breed to close these deals for companies. And tell me about some of the tools that you've just started. You've been playing around with, you've tested that you like, some you don't like. If there's any that you feel comfortable mentioning, you don't have to. But like, what as this fractional sales person that you are, uh, how? What are you doing to keep ahead of the curve with all of this technology?
Yeah, yeah. I'll start that off by saying yes. I'm trying to incorporate as much as possible. A little bit of old dog, new trick here thing, but so long as I'm still in the workforce, absolutely, Gene. There are tools. Some of the standard ones, absolutely. I'm using my Chat GPT and Claude and Gemini. Just again to stay on top of things to gain that knowledge. And then I've been using, I'd say, for about the last 2 quarters, I've been using Nyack AI. And really, I look at that as it's not doing my job for me. It's not just a recorder and a transcriber, but it's really kind of helping me stay focused. Nyack is joining the call with me. Of course, I will ask my audience in advance if they're okay with the fact that Howard's companion is joining. Right, I've used it really as a customizable tool that says, "Look, this is for me. If you don't feel comfortable with it, please let me know." Rarely, if ever, have I found somebody ask me to remove it. They think of it as just kind of a recorder transcriber, but really, it's a co-pilot. It's that companion that keeps me focused, right? Keeps me on track. I imagine most all salespeople, business development people, in the midst of kind of battle, you're in the midst of a call, you might have 30 minutes, you might find a target or a prospect that, they're looking at their phone, they're waiting for their next meeting, they have a million things going on. Time can get short real quickly. A tool like Nyack that I've been using now, I mentioned for a couple of quarters, really kind of helps me understand the sentiment, the psychology, right? The recall, tapping into the hints. It keeps me really focused on my side so that if that 30-minute call turns into about 4 minutes of attention, for the audience on the other side of the call, I can get to the points that I need to get to. I can get those across. I can look to get answers to help me, depending upon where we are in the sales cycle, to help me qualify, to help me move that much closer to closing, or to understand what the pain points are that I may not be addressing. And, or, if I find that audience, gosh, I 3 minutes, not four, I still have thereafter the ability to go back and say, okay, these were the 3 points I didn't get to next. That'll be on a follow-up call. Or can that be an email? Can that be a 60-second exchange on each side to help me further qualify? Because end of the day, Gene, as we know, this is all about that qualification, moving things down funnel, and hopefully closing as best percentage of those opportunities as you can, knowing full well they'll never all close. But a tool like Nyack has really been instrumental for me in the last couple of quarters since I've been using it to like I said, make sure that I'm on track and I'm keeping the conversation the direction I need it to go in.
If you had kind of one thing to say, like what is the one thing it really helps you with the best? What would you say that would be?
Yeah, I'd say really it's it's building that confidence and that rapport, right? I mean, this is a relationship builder, and I look at it as such, right? As again, I guess we would all be blind to say, look, AI is not going to take a chunk out of a lot of different types of businesses or allow for automation that might take my job, this person's job functionally away, or minimize the need to have at the enterprise 1,000 salespeople. They might be able to do so with 250 or 300. So
Right.
for me, it's really it's that effectiveness, right? And again, knowing that not every deal is going to close, a tool like Nyack will help me in my communications with my clients, helping me to put the right information, garbage in, garbage out with the CRM. Nyack really helps with that. Like those hints, did I cover this? I can really get down to the nitty gritty, be granular. And even if I don't capture all that in the CRM, as I'm having these weekly sales calls, or maybe even more often than that with my clients, sometimes they join, sometimes they don't. Of course, look, end of the day, I'm being signed on for a 3, 6, or 9 and 12-month term. Gosh, if I don't get things done, if the revenue doesn't come in, probably doesn't matter. But if there's things in the pipeline and I'm no longer around, they're going to absolutely pick those up and want to close those deals if the deals are still open. So
Right.
I'll point back to that. I mean, like I said, I'll use that term co-pilot again. Kayak helps keep me focused on what's important.
That's awesome. What other tools are you using besides Nyack?
Yeah. I've used a number of different, Dripify is another one for my drip campaigns, right? So I do automate some of my outreach. I'll go back to that old dog mention. Yeah, that's great, but I also want to kind of A/B test that against my manual outreach, right? I'm not going to go through the copy and paste. I mean, we all know how ineffective that is. You'd asked earlier about, why would somebody hire me on as a fractional as opposed to a full time? Could be somebody with 10 years of experience that's a couple decades younger than me at this point that might cost a lot less. So, I want to try a little bit of everything, right? And they talk about, what speaks to a target. Whether you know that target, they're a second degree, you've been warmly introduced. If you're not addressing something that they need, right, a current pain point, why would they bother even responding to you, right? So I do my best in my initial outreach, not just to rely on automation, right? But that should be part of it. It certainly expands your reach. But if I can't speak a little bit, not, hey, I read your, or earnings report from last week and your CEO mentioned that, they're trying to figure out a way to find out the effectiveness of the ROI of their AI investment in 2025. Great. Okay. So I listened. I can easily run, anybody can run a search, right? I can go to ChatGPT. What were the 5 main points that Jim Lanzone mentioned for Yahoo last week? On They don't do an earnings announcement anymore. But this type of a thing, Gene, where I want to try to personalize it. And I've always said, and I feel like a lot of the tools that I use, both Dripify, ChatGPT, Claude, Nyack, again, I'll go back to all of that, really helps me hone in, get to the point of hopefully being able to personalize a little bit. But I still say people do business with folks when they present a solution to a need, right? A current need. There's budget, right? You build that rapport and they actually like you. And then I guess related 3B would be that trust. And I'll
Right.
point back again to Nyack and say, Nyack will help me with the hints and tips, tricks to make sure that I know, am I building that rapport? Am I hitting on all the main points, right? So, like I said, that Dripify tool that I use, I like it because I can go from a manual outreach of 75 or 100 targets in a given week to hundreds or thousands. That said, when you use a tool like that, it does tend to be a bit, repetitive and appear like a form. Personally, I know I've gotten, I'm sure you have too, plenty of outreach of folks trying to sell you this, that, or the other. Okay, look,
Yeah.
again, if I have a need, if I want to do something, good for the world, if I have an affinity, if I'm doing a favor for a friend or former colleague, absolutely. But, like I said, those tools, I still think it all goes back to helping me build on one of those. If they don't have a need, they're not going to bother responding. Hey, great, it's wonderful that you work for this video technology company. That's awesome. We work with a competitor, we're thrilled with them, or we have no need for that, or it mars the user experience. Look, we all come against, whatever the, disagreements might be, whatever those objections are. Nyack helps with that as well, right? The objection handling. I don't have the playbook open in front of me, ready to, scroll to page 33 to say, oh, wait, you have an incumbent, you're working with our competitor, right? Nyack's right there with me, right? Unless I'm being very obvious about it, the target is not going to notice that I'm using a tool like Nyack, but I'm going to bring up those questions. Hey, do you have budget for this? Is this a need? Do you have any RFPs that you have planned to publish this year? Can we be part of it? I should be getting all of that in advance. But once I'm on that call, like I said, my train of thought can go. The dog could be barking in the background. Anybody could take anybody off that on that call off of their thought track.
Right.
Nyack helps bring you back. And again, if I miss anything for whatever reason, I can always go back to it in my follow-up email or the subsequent call.
I mean, I do founder-led sales, and that's exactly what happens sometimes. The dog's barking, somebody's at the front door, or if I'm in an office setting, somebody's walking by and saying hi. There's always these subtle distractions, and then you kind of lose the path that you were on. And I agree, that's where Nyack really comes in and helps you and kind of focus you back onto the track, and also helps you just build that trust, right? That's really what it's all about. At the end, decision sales is a decision, right? And decisions are made by information and emotion, and that's what humans do, and that's just the basis of all of it. And that's really why we all know. And I talked to somebody today, and they're like, "Yeah, we learned how to read a room in a setting where we were all in person." And now the subtleties on a digital screen is very different in how to do it, and it takes a lot longer, right? Or some people never get it out of the gate. So that's what Mike's really trying to do. So just on closing, tell people how they can get in touch with you. I'm sure you're always looking for, more leads, more people, more work. So please.
Digitally, does the blush come across? I don't know. I can't tell if my lighting is right, but thank you, Gene. I really appreciate that offer, that opportunity. Yes, look, I mean, again, I feel fortunate every time somebody contacts me or recommends me. Again, name is Howard Steinberg. Howard at H Scott with two T's, the letter M like Mary, O like Oscar.com. Howard at hscottmo.com. My mobile is 415-971-6684. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the gentleman in Scottsdale, Arizona, formerly of the Bay Area. So I think that I may have mentioned of both of those locations in my LinkedIn profile. But yes, Gene, thank you so very much. So happy to be here. And again, I don't want to overstate it, but I remain a very big fan and big user of NIAC. And I think a lot of sales leaders out there should at least do some kicking of the tires. I think you'll like what you see.
Thank you, Howard. Have always wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you,
Have a
Gene.
great one.
You too.
Bye bye.